All right. Well, welcome. My name is Diane Monig. I'm the Director of Programs here at the ARC of Northern Virginia. And we're very happy to have you here today with Ariel Matz from Matz Consulting to talk about using the IEP as a launching pad. Ariel is a special education consultant. She provides advocacy and support. She has lots of experience working with students through elementary school through age 22. And she is she was a special education teacher with FCPS. So she brings with her a whole host of knowledge to share with us. And we're so happy to have her with us today to share her expertise and her experience and give us some good tips. I just want to share that you are all on mute. And so if you have a question, please type it into the Q&A box. For some reason, don't know why I can't see the chat box, so I'm going to work on that. But please type any questions into the Q&A box as Ariel is talking. And then when we get to the end of the presentation, we will open it up and respond to those questions. Like I said, this session is being recorded. And so we will share the recording, a link to the recording with you later on today, as well as any other resources we talk about and a PDF of the slides. And so with that, I will turn it over to Ariel. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for having me here. Good morning. I'm seeing a few familiar faces on this participant list. I'm really excited to be here, and I'm so happy you're here as well. As a working parent myself, I know that you're very busy, and if you're anything like me, I know that you're also very tired. I also know that you have ambitious dreams for your children, just as I do for mine. And so I'm so excited to be here today to share what I know about ensuring that the IEP is a launchpad for the dreams that you have for your child and that they have for themselves. Before I dive in, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I'm Ariel Matz, a special education consultant here in Northern Virginia. Going back about 15 years now, I was ending college and I had no idea what I wanted to do. So I applied to Teach for America. And my parents asked me not to go west of Chicago. So naturally, I ended up in Los Angeles, where I was assigned to be a resource teacher for 9th grade English. Then my second year of teaching came along, and I still have no idea what I'm doing at this point. My school asked me to teach the classroom for moderate to severe disabilities. I absolutely fell in love with that work, and I have worked with that population since. Since then, that fateful year for me, I've had the privilege of serving students from elementary age all the way through age 22 with a wide variety of disabilities and abilities within the public school systems of Los Angeles Unified and Fairfax County Public Schools. My most recent position was in leadership at a career center for young adults with disabilities, where I coached teachers, developed curriculum, and led reevaluation and IEP meetings. I truly believe that we all deserve to find joy in our journeys and contribute our gifts and talents to our communities. My husband and I live in Alexandria with our 2- and 4-year-old girls, and just like you, I actively seek support from experts. When I brought my babies home, they totally forgot to give me a manual. So if they forgot to give you your manual at the hospital, I'm here to offer you some high impact suggestions to help prepare you and your child for the transition from the school system. Diane and the ARC, I really can't thank you enough for having me here today. As a special educator from Fairfax County Schools, I've watched and recommended your webinars to so many families, and it's just beyond cool for me to be here in my new role as a special education consultant. So I'm going to walk you through what we're going to go through today. We are going to better understand your role and your child's role in person-centered planning. We're going to take a step back and look at the big picture, which is going to help us create a vision statement that's going to be based on your child's interests, strengths, and challenges. And then I'm going to give you suggestions on what to bring with you to the IEP table, what we're going to be doing after the IEP, And then I really look forward to answering any questions that you might have. So why? So you're here because you want to know how to use the IEP as a launch pad for your child's future. The transition plan and the individualized education plan are designed to ensure that your child is receiving appropriate services and accommodations. And it's also a plan for their future. When you have a child with a disability, you are making big decisions about their education and advocating for their education from a very young age. Will they participate in alternative assessments? What amount of their day will be spent in general education? What services do they need to be successful in the school environment? While of course those decisions are based in the present, every choice we make for our children impacts their future post-high school. From a very, very early age, you've been making impactful decisions already that may even have determined whether your child will receive a standard diploma at age 18. From that early age, you also need to be thinking about what is going to happen when that school bus stops coming. And we need to base our decisions for your child's future on that vision. We all know that there's disappointing outcomes for people with disabilities: unemployment, social isolation, living in poverty, connections to the criminal justice system, and poor mental health. Only 1 in 3 Virginians with a disability is currently employed. That statistic is telling us that we need to be doing more to prepare our people for employment, independent living, and better outcomes. Today, we're going to learn how to shift our mindsets and use the IEP to create more opportunities for your child's future. Our people belong in their communities. Our people are needed in their communities. Let's use the IEP to set your child up to be contributing members of their communities. With this webinar, I truly hope to empower you to take on the role as an expert at the IEP table and to use the IEP process and person-centered transition planning to set your child up for success when they inevitably graduate or age out of the school system. I'd like to take a moment here for you to reflect on your journey as a parent of a child with disabilities. How has your involvement in the IEP process changed? However your involvement has been up to this point, I'm going to ask you to get highly involved. It is important to understand that the IDEA protections that your child is entitled to receive right now in school are no longer going to apply once your child leaves high school or turns 21. Your school is going to help you with the transition planning process, but once that school bus stops coming, it's going to be on you as the parent or guardian to ensure your child has what they need to be successful. Now, of course, we have other laws such as Section 504 and Americans with Disabilities Act that will become more important when your child leaves the school system and enters adulthood. However, you and your child are going to have to seek those protections. You will be the one to ensure that your child has support once they exit the school system. So this transition isn't just going to apply to your child, it's going to be a big step for you as well. In order to set your whole family up for success for when that school bus stops coming, we are going to need to become active partners in transition planning. According to the National Technical Assistance Center on Transition, family engagement is crucial during the transition process. Research shows that when families are meaningfully and continuously engaged in their child's learning and development, they can positively impact their child's health, development, academic, and well-being outcomes into adulthood. Students whose families are active partners with the school experience higher success. In fact, of all of the factors that determine student success, family engagement is at the top of that list. So what does engagement really look like? We'll start with what involvement looks like. Involvement is when families take part in activities that are already determined by the school. So that's the filling out of the paperwork, chaperoning a dance, or attending a meeting about your child. Family engagement is really taking it to the next level. Families who are engaged are active participants in the decision-making process. You need to remember that you know your child best, and your knowledge of your child in the transition planning and individualized education planning process is going to lead to better outcomes for your child. Let's talk about your role. Number one, you are your child's #1 advocate. You're going to provide information about your child. Remember, you know them best. Have frequent communication with your child and the IEP team on progress towards goals. Transition planning is an ongoing process, and you have a dedicated IEP team who is there to communicate and support you. We want you to promote and encourage your child's self-determination and independence starting at a young age. I am clearly never going to learn to run a marathon or fly a plane because I am just not going to try to do that. The same goes for the skills our children need to be successful. You cannot learn if you do not try. Allow your child to grow and learn from new and varied experiences, successes, and failures. And lastly, ensure that the IEP is meaningful and practical for your child. We're going to start with the most important step, which is involving your child. According to information provided by the Virginia I'm Determined Project, self-determined people believe in themselves as capable and effective people who can take control of their lives. Self-determination really means that you get to choose how to live your own life. How do we help our children become self-determined? We involve them. We encourage their participation in their everyday lives. We build opportunities for them to increase independence in our home and also within our communities. We allow for choice making. They participate in our chores in our home and in community activities. We let them make progress and we let them fail. The school also plays a huge role in your child's transition. They are going to assist your child in drafting the transition plan. They're going to complete age-appropriate transition assessments to get a better understanding of your child. They're going to help students and parents identify what needs to be accomplished in order to achieve the post-secondary goals that you all agree on. They're going to communicate with your child and you on progress. And they are also going to educate you on the transition services to consider. If you're not yet familiar with the transition services that your school or school district offers, I definitely recommend reaching out to your child's case management manager or the employment and transition representative at your school to get a full understanding of what is available for your child. Part of being engaged in this transition planning process is having a full understanding of the services and courses available to your child. Before we dive into the IEP, we're going to take a step back and think about the big picture. It's actually perfect timing because we're still in January and resolutions may be fresh on your mind. I want you to think back on a New Year's resolution that you have made yourself. It can be this year, which you probably haven't broken yet, or think back to years past. Why did you choose it? We often choose goals for ourselves that are going to further our career, impact our health in a positive way, or help us become more personally fulfilled in our lives. Yet, when it comes to our students' IEPs, we tend to get stuck on the minor things that they can't do, perhaps even holding on to previous year's goals without thinking of what that bigger picture is. We cannot develop a meaningful IEP and transition plan without really thinking about the big picture for our children and aligning the transition plan and IEP towards those future goals. So, what do you want your child's life to look like when the school bus stops coming? Take it a step further. What do you want your child's life to look like when they're in their 30s? And what do you not want your child's life to look like? I know we can all agree that we want our children to have a good quality of life. A quality of life, that's a tricky statement there. Successful transition to adulthood is commonly defined as a person having an enhanced quality of life and playing a productive role in society. But what is that quality of life? What is a satisfying life? Stop to think about what makes your life satisfying, and it may vary and it may change all the time. We base our quality of life on how satisfied we feel about work, education, recreation, spiritual life, social connections, community living, our own health, and our own emotional well-being. Since we're all so different, these categories will all rank in varying orders for us. Before your next IEP meeting, I want you to take the time to brainstorm what you and your child want for their future. How are they going to find satisfaction once they transition out of the school system? You can think about these categories here as you brainstorm your vision for your child's future. You can talk to others who know your child well and ask them about your child's interests, their support needs, and their performance across all settings in their lives. You're going to talk to that Special Olympics coach, the speech pathologist, the youth group leader, the best buddies advisor. You get the picture. We're going to use this brainstorming and fact-finding mission to come up with a vision statement that encompasses 3 important areas in our child's life: employment, independent living, and community access. Actually, if you have a piece of paper and pen, you can go ahead and write these 3 categories down and start your brainstorm now as I'm talking. Employment options for your child may range from a full-time paid and integrated position all the way down to segregated employment, which is usually unpaid or has minimal compensation. Independent living options also vary widely. They range from hands-on assistance to independent housing. You need to realistically consider the living arrangement that is going to work for your family. For community access, I want you to think about how your child is going to access the environments that they want to access and that you want them to be able to access, and also how they're going to access social experiences. For many of our children, once they transition out of high school, their social experiences may become very limited. So as a family, I want you to use that brainstorm to come up with an overarching vision statement for when the school bus stops coming in the areas of employment, independent living, and community access. So I'll give you a few examples here. My child will live independently and access their community and employment via public transportation. While my child continues to live with our family, they will gain autonomy and create friendships by attending a day program. My child will contribute to their community through volunteer work and live in a group home. My child will find personal fulfillment through work they enjoy and live with roommates. You're going to write this down and you're going to keep it. We're going to need to bring that to the IEP meeting, and we're going to use this statement that we've created to ground ourselves in the entire IEP document. Now that you have a vision statement, we can use it as the lens that will create the entire IEP through. If we appropriately align the IEP to our future vision for our children, it can be a tool to help them reach that vision that you want for them and that they want for themselves. So we have our vision statement. We understand our school's responsibility. We understand our role and we understand our child's role. We're finally ready to dive into the IEP, and we're going to start with what is, in my opinion, the most important part of the IEP, which is the transition plan. A meaningful transition plan is based on your family's vision statement, as well as your child's interests, strengths, and challenges. IDEA tells us that transition IEPs include measurable post-secondary goals that are based upon age-appropriate transition assessment Include transition services and the course of study that are going to enable your child to meet their goals. A transition is a change. Transition means the process of changing from one way of life to another way of life. The purpose of transition plans is to facilitate movement from school to the world of adult work, living independently, and community participation. Meaningful transition planning should help your child figure out who they are and who they want to become. Another moment to reflect here. How did you choose your job? As I said, I became a teacher through Teach for America, but I stayed and got good at it because I liked it, and it's a job that plays to my strengths. If I think back to my experiences in high school, there were actually a lot of things that prepared me to be successful as a special education teacher, such as my involvement in Best Buddies, babysitting opportunities, and later working as a camp counselor. If I had had a transition plan or support to really lay out my strengths, interests, and needs, I probably would not have majored in Middle Eastern studies, as my interests and strengths have always lied elsewhere. The transition plan is going to help us better understand who your child is, where they are going, and how they are going to get there. In order to best understand who your child is, the transition plan is going to ask us to fill in some really valuable information. And we are active partners in the IEP. We are going to ensure that this information is meaningful, that it aligns with our family's vision for the future, and it guides the entire IEP document. One of the first sections that you're going to be asked to fill out is interests. And you're going to review it as part of the transition plan. And we want this section to be robust. I often feel that this section is glossed over when in reality, it's one of the most important pieces of our IEP meeting. I am glad that your child enjoys video games, but I am going to need some more information here, because everyone is more willing to work and excel at something that they are good at and that they are interested in. You would be much less likely to stay in a job that bored you or was too difficult for you on the daily. The IEP team is really lucky to have you and your child as the experts here, and I'm going to ask you to really take on that expert role and come prepared for this meeting with a list of your child's interests, and to start thinking about how those interests could be related to their future employment. Let's talk further about interests. What makes your child happy out in the community? What do they do in their leisure time? What items or activities appear to motivate them? What chores are they most interested in at home? It's incumbent on us as part of the IEP team to do everything that we can to empower our children to find out what they like. We can do that through internships, job shadowing, interviewing family members about their jobs, volunteer work. We can think about what our children like to do in their spare time. All of these things are little tips and clues that are going to lead us to the type of employment that your child may excel in and they may like. The team can use this valuable information that you are bringing to the IEP table to build work capacities. The next part of the transition plan is equally important. We're going to review your students' strengths. I want you to also come to the IEP prepared with this list that well. I know I'm giving you a lot of homework. I cannot tell you how many times I've been in an IEP meeting where the school team finds out about something amazing the child can do, or vice versa. Your input is priceless here, as you know your child best. For this list, I want you to keep in mind their positive personality characteristics that are going to serve them well in adulthood. What personal qualities might prepare them for workplace success? I want you to think about not only their strengths and responsibilities at home, but also their behaviors in community. Is your child friendly when they meet new people? Perhaps that's going to serve them as a job in customer service. Does your child demonstrate strength in folding laundry when you're folding laundry together? Perhaps this is going to serve them well in a job in retail. I encourage you to think about how the traits associated with your child's disability could actually help them in the workforce. For instance, if your child is rigid with their schedule, do they have strength in being on time? If your child has limited social interests, are they more focused when they are completing tasks? Perhaps your child is disorganized. Does that make them actually very creative? Now we have ourselves thinking about how our child's traits can benefit them in their adult lives. This is an awesome conversation to be having with your child as you are working towards their own self-determination. As we go through person-centered transition planning, we focus on what your child can do. We uncover their best qualities, the contributions that they can make, and when and where they are at their very best. We find the best performance in your child's life, and we use that as a foundation for creating a meaningful plan for their future. We have now, going through that whole process, uncovered a lot of information on our child's strengths and interests. This is going to allow us to meet them where they are and build from there. With the input that we are bringing to the table, we're also going to discuss with the team what opportunities can be built for your child that plays on their strengths and interests. When you go through the transition plan, you're going to create post-secondary goals. As I told you, those are regulated. And you are also going to create yearly objectives for your child to be working on to meet their future goals. I'd like us to reframe objectives into opportunities. We're going to rebrand objectives. They're more exciting now. And we're also going to take ownership over some of this learning. What opportunities can be built over the next year to support your child's post-secondary goals? How can we build on your child's interests and strength to prepare them for the transition from the school system? If your child demonstrates strength in organizing, could they work in the school's mailroom? If your child is interested in animals, could they volunteer at a local animal shelter? If your child is friendly, could the employment representative at your school help them find a job on the weekends as a hostess? Perhaps they could be greeters at your place of worship. If your child is amazing at vacuuming at their worksite job, could they also be completing this task at home? These opportunities and generalizations of skills are so important for both your family and the school to be working towards and creating as a team. When we work together, we can create consistency and expectations, we build skills, and we allow for generalization of those skills. As we go through this the transition plan, we are going to become informed on what courses and services are available for our children and build opportunities for them. Now, along with our strengths and interests, we all have our challenges, and talking about challenges is equally important and a conversation that you also need to be having with your child if appropriate. Does your child's current skill set match the demands of the activities that you envision them doing in the future? I want you to focus on this one question here. What is going to prevent your child from obtaining or maintaining employment, living independently, and accessing their community independently? We're going to write it all down. We can break it further into the 3 sections that we did before: employment, independent living, and community access. And if you have your paper, you can go ahead and write out those 3 sections again. For employment, we can start thinking about those behaviors that might interfere in the workplace: lacking social skills, short attention span, limited verbal communication, difficulty following directions. For independent living, if you envision your child living independently or in supported living, what skills are they going to need? What does your child need help with in the home? What self-care skills are they lacking right now? Write out all of the things that they need assistance with in their day. Then we have accessing our communities. what type of support do they need in the community? Do you envision them driving? Are they able to access the environments that they want to access? Can they pick out their groceries, manage money, order at a restaurant? This list may be getting long and it may start to look overwhelming, so please stick with me. So upon first glance here, you're probably thinking that I accidentally included a medical slide. I did not. In the medical field, they use the term triage, which means to conduct an assessment of patients in order to determine the urgency of their need for treatment and the nature of treatment. That means we're going to take care of the gushing wound before the head cold. We can use this same model for looking at that list of challenges and creating goals to focus on those challenges. I like to call this the triage method. We have our list of challenges in the areas of employment, independent living, and community access. And now we're going to categorize your list into these categories of resuscitation, emergency, urgent, semi-urgent, and non-urgent. From there, once we've categorized those, we are only going to look at those resuscitation and emergency 1 and 2s, that those are going to have the greatest impact on your child's future, and that's where we're going to focus. We'll bring this input to the IEP team, and this is going to help the IEP team form meaningful transition goals and objectives, or as we're calling them now, opportunities for your child, as well as inform their course of study. We've done a lot of work so far. We did our detective work. We talked to important people in our child's life. We brainstormed and uncovered your child's strengths, interests, and their challenges. All of this is groundwork for creating a meaningful transition plan and IEP. We are bringing all of that to the IEP table, and we're going to work collaboratively with the team to create a document that will truly help reach goals for your child's future. We are going to create goals based on the challenges that you have brought to the table and that the team sees. And remember, we're going to stay focused on those challenges that are of the highest importance, those level 1 and 2 in the triage method. We are going to make sure that the post-secondary goals we are creating are both realistic and attainable. It is wonderful when our child reaches high. They may want to be a professional basketball player, but unless they're playing varsity basketball right now, this is not going to be a realistic or attainable goal. These conversations are challenging to have, but they're necessary as we build appropriate opportunities for our children. Their annual IEP goals are the academic, functional, and behavioral goals that are based on needs that are identified by evaluation and their present level of performance. These goals require progress reports and are bound by the IEP timeline.
Ariel, excuse me 1 second. I know we were going to wait until the end to take questions, but we did have one question in the Q&A box about if you could explain the triage method again, because that was a little bit confusing. So before you went on, if you could just talk about that a little bit more.
So when I'm going through challenges and I have them all listed out, I went through and I have my challenges in the areas of employment, independent living, and community access, and that list might start looking really long. And I want you to kind of order them. So maybe even go ahead and highlight, like, what is that, like, this needs to be dealt with right away. Same as like a medical professional would do. So, you know, if, for instance, you know, there is a behavior that is interfering with your child being able to access the community, you know, that might be more important to focus on than their lack of multiplication skills, right? Did that help explain?
Yes, perfect.
Yes.
Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, so when I am going through that list, I can use a highlighter or even make these 5 different categories on a piece of paper and really think about what impacts your child the most. Is it that independent living skill that they need to be developing, and really think about it in taking that step back and thinking about their future, like what is actually going to be meaningful to them when they are in their 30s. Thanks so much for that question. So when we are at the table and we are developing our annual goals, I want you to consider how the skills the IEP is targeting are going to support the IEP goals. The post-secondary goals from your transition plan. And this is why our transition plan comes first in the IEP, and why, as I said, it's the most important part of the IEP. We are going to look through the entire IEP through our lens of our vision statement that we created. And as we are reviewing the IEP, we are going to ask ourselves if the goals, accommodations, and services are going to support our vision for our child's future. While annual goals may need to link to an academic standard, the goals can also align to the student's transition plan. I'm not saying to ditch the academic goals, but I'm asking you to consider embedding annual goals that are going to support your child's post-secondary goals, what they want for their future, what you want for their future, and relate that to their transition services. As we are developing the entire IEP, you need to keep your vision statement in the back of your mind. How can this IEP support your vision for your child's future? Will these goals impact my child when they are in their 30s? Unfortunately, once that IEP is signed, our job here isn't done, and isn't that just parenting? Once the team has come to a conclusion on goals, it's essential for families to develop opportunities for skill improvement in the home and the community. Your school should be doing this alongside you as well. And if you need help with this, you should talk to your child's IEP team. That is what they are there for. We are going to find opportunities for your child to practice employment-related skills at home, such as time management, teamwork, and appropriate social skills. And this is as simple as waking up with an alarm clock to practice time management, working with you to make dinner to practice teamwork, and maintaining a conversation at the dinner table to practice appropriate social skills. It's important to realize that many of the chores and responsibilities a person has to perform at home develops work behaviors and skills that are used in real jobs. Home is actually really the first place we learn about having responsibilities, and so therefore prepares us for work. I'm going to leave you with this. Inclusion and community engagement are associated with critical outcomes for individuals with disabilities. All of our people need sustained strategic practice in their communities to gradually build independence, access social experiences, and keep themselves safe and happy. You cannot learn if you do not try. We are going to allow our children to grow and learn from new and varied experiences, their successes, their failures. My kid actually reminded me of this recently, my 2-year-old. I offered her help. She's trying to figure out the stairs. She's batting my hand away. And it really reminded me to take a step back and let her build that skill for herself. Because everyone, including individuals with significant disabilities, show competent performance in the course of living their daily lives. We need to include them in their daily lives. We all learn by doing. We need repeated practice to master the skills we need to thrive as adults. We need to give our people the chance to figure it out for themselves. And with that, I've completed my presentation here, and I would absolutely love to stay on and chat with you and answer any questions that you might have.
And I just want to, just a reminder, Ariel, thank you. For the people in on this webinar, my apologies because the chat box was disabled unintentionally, and I can't turn it back on during the meeting, but please use the Q&A box. If you could, you can also raise your hand and I can unmute you if you want to ask it verbally. That is okay as well. As a reminder, I know there were a few people who signed on a little bit late. This session is recorded, and so I'll send you a link to the recording after. And then also we will share the slides with you. Does anybody have any questions? Oh, here we go. Okay. Oh, Ariel, would you mind putting the contact information back up? Ariel, I'm not sure if you can see these. I will share. Someone said, thank you so much for an excellent program. I'm leaving, but I'm looking forward to getting the slides.
Thanks so much, Chris.
Oh, here's a good question. Can you talk a little bit more about the IEP team working together?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am coming from the perspective of now I, have worked with some advocacy with families and then also from in the school system. And, as you're working with your IEP team, one of my favorite questions that you can ask just to kind of insert yourself into conversations, how can I best support the work that you are doing in school? And that is just like a great way to get yourself on a comfortable level with the teacher, and you guys are on the same page, you're working towards the same goals. And I think that that helps start developing that relationship with your teacher, because it is their job to develop a relationship with you, but that might not necessarily happen, right? We have different teachers with different personalities, just as we have different personalities. So sometimes we do need to insert ourselves in there in order to work with our IEP team. And I would really just start with that question of how can I support your work?
Ariel, we have another one. It says, this seems to apply more for high school students transitioning. Can we use the same approach or a modified version for elementary school kids? What would that look like?
Absolutely, yeah. So you're right that this is with the, towards an older child. I think that any of this is valuable to be thinking about because the school bus is going to stop coming for all of us. So it's incumbent on us to really be thinking about what our child's strengths and needs are with our vision for the future from a really young age, because even, in the third grade, you are making that decision for your child. Are they going to be participating in an alternative assessment? I think that's third grade. Now I'm forgetting, but it's young, you're making impactful decisions. So, does that mean that they are on a more vocational path? So yeah, this does apply to elementary students. And I think, especially when you're thinking of challenges and thinking about how to decide, what needs to be included on the IEP, what do I need to focus on with the team? I think that working through that triage method is valuable for any age student.
And Ariel, what's the timeline for the discussion of the IEP? I think you mean transition. I'm assuming this means transition to IEP.
A transition IEP starts when your child is in middle school. They'll either be 8th grade or age 14, whatever comes first here in the state of Virginia. And when they're in middle school, they'll start putting together different portfolios and start some career exploration. But these conversations will continue to unfold and become more important as your child gets older and older.
And we have another question. Do you have any evaluation sheets that consider skills and challenges that teachers could use when a student is out on a work site? Then that information can be built into the meeting and the goals.
Absolutely. So that is part of what your teacher will be bringing, your case manager, your teacher will be bringing to the IEP meetings. So they will, that may be one of the assessments that they have completed in order to prepare for the meeting. I said this and I'll say it again, that that's something that the school team is mandated to do. That they need to complete career transition assessments in order to get a better understanding of your child. They need to be different every year as well. So, you know, if the school team is only checking off interview every year, you can push back and say that that is not enough, that, you know, you might need a career assessment or, you know, an observation completed on the work site. There's really a ton of different career assessments that are out there. And, you know, also as well as personality assessments and interest assessments to really get to understand what a good future for your child would be. It helps. There's a lot of assessments that your teacher knows about. And also if you email me, I can send you some links to some really good assessments that can be used.
And just there was kind of a follow-up question to that from the parent. She was, they don't always have those assessments that the teachers are doing, and how can, as the parent, kind of request that the teacher do certain assessments?
So is this like a specific assessment that you want the teacher to be completing?
Waiting for us. And then there was a question, let me see what she replies. I mean, if there are tools out there that a parent knows of, is that something that you can suggest to the teacher?
Absolutely, yeah. I think that you can suggest it, that they, you know, may or may not take that suggestion, but, you know, if it's something that, you know, you complete and feel comfortable sharing with the team, then I would say that you should bring that information, and you can include it in the present level of performance or attached as parent notes.
That's very helpful. And then one other question about what about students with intellectual disabilities? Assessments aren't always for students with intellectual disabilities.
No, students with intellectual disabilities are mandated to have those assessments, career assessments and transition assessments completed. In fact, it is probably most important for those students to be doing as many interest inventories and coming to understand themselves. So yeah, students with intellectual disabilities absolutely need to be involved in the transition planning process to their full extent possible. And that may mean that you and the team are doing some more uncovering of their strengths. Perhaps they're not able to do that, but you need to be working with the team for your intellectually disabled child, because they can also contribute to their communities, and the same laws apply for them in regards to the IEP and the transition plan.
Thanks, Ariel. There aren't any other questions in the Q&A box. Is there anything anyone else would like to ask or have a comment?
I see two hands.
Oh, okay. Hold on, let me go over there. Sarah, go ahead. You can, I just unmuted you.
Hi. My question is about my 10th grade daughter.
Yeah.
Who's very high functioning, has severe ADHD, high autism spectrum. Her goals seem to be focused on things that just don't matter to us. Like she'll be able to name different geometry shapes, but with 80% accuracy or something like that. I'm like, who cares? you know,
I feel
because
you.
I'm looking at how does that help her in her life? And so how do I get them to shift that focus to things that, I mean, how about we talk about her executive functioning skills that are hugely lacking? That's what is impacting her schooling now and will impact her future. So how do you get that shift in mindset kind of to take place? Because I understand that they're trying to make these goals measurable and apply academically and all these things.
So is she a student who is participating in alternative assessment?
You mean alternative
or
tests?
is she doing SOLs, or is she doing alternative assessment?
I'm not an SOL fan, but she has been opted out until, now that she's older, she's doing SOLs.
She is doing SOLs. Okay. So yeah, so they are mandated to keep some academic goals in there, but I would also suggest to the team to be adding, goals that are meaningful to your family and to your child. So, if she is getting the related service of speech, for instance, or OT, those goals should be, completely functional and help work towards, what you see for her future. And you can talk to them about how to make those academic goals that they have in there line up with what your goals are for her post-secondary goals. So, if how can they get creative in that geometry goal to make it something that is functional for her? That's a tricky one, and I'd have to think about it, but that's the point of the meeting and getting all together, is that you are editing those goals to make them as appropriate as possible for a child, and also tell them that you want to embed functional and adaptive goals for her.
Okay, and if I can piggyback on that, while you were talking, I was looking at her IEP and how you were talking about how does this support the post-secondary goal?
Yeah.
And every category it says considered but not appropriate at this time. And that seems like something I need to revisit, because at 16, it feels like all of those are appropriate.
She definitely
skills, educational skills, all that.
Yeah, this is in her transition plan.
Yes.
Yeah, that definitely needs to be. Yes, I would contact your team quickly and tell them, I would request an addendum to review that.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Any other questions anybody has or comments they want to put in the Q&A, or you can raise your hand. No. All right. I don't think so. All right. Well, thank you all very much. And like I said, I'll send out some additional information. The ARC of Northern Virginia also has some additional resources that I think may be helpful based on the conversation we had today. So I'll send some additional links out. As always, feel free to contact us with any questions, and Ariel has her contact information in the slide. So I know that she will also be happy to take any questions, emails. Okay. All right. Thank you, Ariel.
Thank you all so much.